Maseches Nazir Daf Nun Ches. The Gemara is discussing the concept of hakafas kol harosh, that is, taking a haircut which shaves off all the hair of the head. The Gemara has introduced that is possibly a violation of the isser of cutting off the peyos, l'sakifu, possibly not a violation. We had seen in some Machokas Amaram, the Gemara also is in a Machokas Tanaim as well. The Gemara will introduce two brises that contradict and say that it's based on this Machokas. The Gemara will give two other ways of understanding it, reject one of them, and then the Gemara will get into the various limudim that we could have from the psukim that are involved in the haircut of a mitzvah, and go back and forth in the two ways of learning what each one will do with the other one's drashas. So let's begin. The Gemara has already said the concept of hakafas kol harosh, shaving the entire head, is that a violation of leisakifu. So I want to say some Machokas Tanaim. Based on what? So we have a brisa that discusses in the parsha of the haircut of a mitzvah, it says, besides for saying that he needs to take a haircut, that is not only take a haircut, but shave all the hair on the body, it specifically mentions Roisli and as Zakane. It says all his hair, his head, and his beard. The Gemara is going to get into Zakane soon, but the Gemara here says two conflicting brises that describe why it isolates and singles out the hair on his head. One says, because it's to teach me that even though there's an isser of hakafas harosh, of taking a haircut, still it's telling me that you're allowed to shave it all off anyway. The other brisa says, no, that's not what the reason you need it. Rashi needed to tell me that a Nazir who is not allowed to take haircut is allowed to if he's a mitzvah. So the word Rosh is to push off either the leisakifu or to push off the isser haircut of a Nazir. So Gemara wants to say these two brises, what are they arguing about? They're obviously arguing about, is there an isser leisakifu or not? According to the one that says the isser is the reason you need Rosh is to tell me that there's no leisakifu in this case. Obviously, generally, there is a leisakifu, and that leisakifu is applying here where you're shaving the entire head, so it holds that shaving the entire head is called an isser of leisakifu. The other one obviously holds that it's not, probably because, and that's why it has to go to Nazir, because probably it holds that hakafas kol harosh, shaving the entire head, is not a violation of leisakifu. Says the Gemara, no, this Machokas has nothing to do with that. That's a Machokas Amarim, not a Machokas Tanaim. And there's two other ways of understanding this. So the first way the Gemara brings from Rava is that really they all hold that there is no isser shaving all the hair of the head. So why then does one brisa say that that's what the word Rosh is to teach me? That you're allowed to do that, even for that you're allowed to do that. You're allowed to shave all the hair on the head for a mitzvah, but there's no such isser. Gemara says it's teaching me that you can actually shave the payas first and the rest of the hair afterwards, even though shaving the payas first should be violating leisakifu because you're still leaving hair on the head, and only afterwards do you shave off all the rest of the hair of the head, however much of a break you need between those two actions. The Gemara doesn't specify, but it's to teach me that even in that circumstance you're allowed to. Generally, there would be no isser if it was a kafas kol harosh, but here you're not doing a kafas kol harosh. So the Gemara says, but that can't be correct, because if you have to do an isser and you can do it in a permitted way, then there's no heter to do the isser. It's a concept that we've seen from Rish Lakish in the past. If you have two conflicting obligations and you can possibly resolve both of them without having to violate any of them, you have to. So why would this mitzvah be allowed to shave off his face first and then the rest of his head and violate the isser of hakafa of leisakifu if he could just do a kafas kol harosh according to you and not violate it? So therefore the Gemara goes to its other answer, and the Gemara says really both opinions, both brises hold that kafas kol harosh is called leisakifu. Why does one say that the limud here is for Nazir, not about leisakifu? Because he holds that leisakifu is solved in a different way. And now hakafas kol harosh is a lav. He violates hakafa is a lav. He violates a lav by doing that. And we know from different source that an asay pushes away a loisasay. Where do you see that? The Torah describing tzitzis says leisil v'shatnes gedilim tasalach. I have a brisa that says that those two mitzvahs of not wearing shatnes and wearing tzitzis are put together to teach you that you're allowed to violate the isser of shatnes in the tzitzis. You can put wool tzitzis, for example, on a linen cloth, on the beged of linen, even though that's shatnes, you're allowed to in that circumstance. Therefore, since I already know that Anasay pushes away a leisasay, I don't need the extra word roishay in the parsha of Mitzvah to tell that to me. And therefore, it's not telling me that you're allowed to violate leisakifu. It's telling me something else. It's telling me you're allowed to violate the Isra of Nazir, which is a leisasay and an asay. There's two mitzvahs there. There's Kadosh Yeh and Gadel Pera and Loy Savar. So that's why there I need an extra pasuk of Roshai. Says the Gemara, okay, but the other opinion that holds that you learn it from Roshai, why does he not learn from Tzitzis like everyone else? Why does he say that you need the pasuk to teach me that you're allowed to take a haircut for a mitzvah, even though he violates Leis Akifu? So the Gemara answers, he holds that you can't learn it from Tzitzis, and that's because that pasuk of Tzitzis is used for something else. And we have a brisa, we have a limud that's brought from Rava. The Torah says, "V'dasna al tzitzis hakanaf." The word hakanaf there is extra because we know we're talking about on the kanaf, on the corner. And that's to teach me that the string has to be the same the same type of cloth, the same type of fiber as the corner, as the beged itself. Now, as opposed to that, you have our pasuk, which says "Leisil b'shatnes temru pishtim," teaches me that they're allowed to be shatnes, but how could it be shatnes if the string and the cloth have to be from the same material? Therefore, we learn from here that if it's tzemer or pishtim, so if it's wool or if it's linen, it can be any other material. If it is some other material besides for wool or linen, that's when it has to be the exact material that the cloth itself is made from. Now, because I need to have the shatness reference to tzemer pishtim to be able to make this limud here, this pasuk is not available for the other drasha, and that's why we have to have Roshai to teach me that a lav is pushed away by an asay. And the Gemara now asks, according to the brisa that says that the pasuk of Roshai is used to teach me that an asay pushes off just the lav of Leis Hakifu. So how does he know that an asay pushes away a Leis Asay and an asay, and that even a Nazir who has a Leis Asay and an asay is allowed to take a haircut if he's a mitzayra? So the Gemara says you could learn from the other word that's extra in the pasuk of Mitzayra discussing the beard. It says it singles out not only Roshai but also Zikonai. So why does it say that? Because there you also have a lesson and it's teaching me that you are allowed to violate that Isser. Specifically, it's written in the context of a Kohen who's a Mitzayra, because the Isser Giluach is written explicitly by Kahanim, and to say that even a Kohen who is a Mitzayra is allowed to shave the beard, even though it's Leis Asay and an asay. So you see, you have those two things together, you're still allowed to violate it, and that's the source for Leis Asay and an asay. Says Umar, okay, so according to the other opinion, why doesn't he just learn from there? Why does he need a special pasuk of Roshai? Why doesn't he just learn from Zikonai? So the Gemara says no. He holds you cannot learn from a Kohen who with his beard to a Nazir. And the reason is that shaving of the beard of a Kohen is called Lav Shein Shav B'Kol. It only applies to Kahanim. It doesn't apply to anyone else. And since it's something that doesn't apply to anyone else, it's a special, strict, special, isolated halacha. You can't learn halachas from there to someplace else. And he says it has to be that this is true. You can't learn from there to anywhere else, because generally we say that an asay does not push away a Leis Asay and an asay. 1 against 2 does not work. We only say it by the Mitzayra shaving his beard and shaving his head. Obviously, then you're not learning from the Kohen shaving his beard to anywhere else, and therefore you also can't learn from the Kohen shaving his beard to the Nazir Mitzayra. The Gemara asks the other way. According to the opinion that says the word Roshai is to teach you that a Mitzayra is allowed to violate the Isser Nazirus, which is a Leis Asay and an asay, should be able to learn from there to shaving the beard. Why do I need the pasuk of Zikonai? Even though I could learn this way from Kohen to Nazir, that's because it's a Lav Shein Shav B'Kol, but I could learn from Nazir to Kohen. Why should I need Zikonai? So the answer is you need that because the fact that drasha exists teaches me another halacha. It teaches me that the shaving has to be done with a razor. Because if a brisa that points out that the fact that the Torah teaches me that you're allowed to violate that Isser shows that you can't possibly satisfy both halachas, which means that you have to do that haircut with a razor. Because if you didn't do it with a razor, you wouldn't be Yaitza. Otherwise, why does there have to tell me that you're allowed to violate the Isser of shaving the beard? Why don't you just do it with a pair of scissors, and that won't violate it? Obviously, the shaving of the Mitzayra has to be done with a razor, and therefore you would have to do it in a way that violates the Isser of shaving the beard. Now, how do you know that it's only usher to shave a beard with a razor and not with scissors? So for that, we have the brisa. The brisa spells out, it says leistashkas, which is that the Isser is only to destroy it down to the skin and down to the root. And you may have thought that that applies to even plucking it out with a malakit or a hitni, tools that are used to pluck it. So with that, it says yigalechu. It has to be a cutting action. So the only isser is cutting it in a way that cuts it to the root, which is with a razor. So that's how we know you wouldn't violate the isser of shaving the beard if it wasn't a razor. And the fact that the Torah tells me you're allowed to violate it for a mitzayra teaches me that the mitzayra has to use a razor, otherwise he wouldn't be permitted to violate the isser if he didn't have to by using another tool. The Gemara now asks, according to the opinion that says that the pasuk of Roishai is to teach me that you're allowed to violate Leisakifu, why do I need the pasuk of Zakani at all? I could learn it from Roishai as well, because it could apply either to, because you have the lava of Leisakifu, and you also have the Isra of Nazirus. You don't know which one it applies to, so therefore you can learn both out of them. They're even. Why should I learn one over the other? And therefore I could learn each of them. So the answer is no, because I would have learned one and not the other. I may not know which one, but I would learn one and not the other, because each one I can only learn one and not the other. Because if it was referring to Kahanim, it would refer only to Kahanim, because it's Lav Shin Shabbat Bakol. Referring to Nazirim, it would be referring only to Nazirim, because it's Yeshnei B'She'ela. Could always take off the Isser Nazirus, and therefore you can't learn from there to anywhere else because it has that special halacha. Gemara now moves briefly at the end of the daf to a totally different sugya, and that's whether removing the body hair for a man violates the Isser of Leisilbash. Doing something that women do in their own personal care is usser, so is that something that's considered to be a woman's activity? So the Gemara says that Rav says that one is allowed to remove all the body hair with a razor, and it doesn't violate anything. So we're asking if a brisa that says somebody who removes the hair of the armpit and the hair of the lower area violates an Isser and he gets malchus. Whereas that's talking about where he removes it with a razor, Rav was talking about with a pair of scissors. So where says, but Rav said with a razor. He said clearly, batar. So where says he didn't mean with a razor, he meant like with a razor, meaning that it's removed down to the surface of the skin, but it not actually with a razor, with a pair of scissors. If you be with a razor, then it would violate the Isser. Then we quote of Yechanan, who says somebody who removes the hair of the armpit and the base area gets malchus. The more Eskel is a brisa that says that it's only midrabanon. You shouldn't get malchus for a derabanan. The more says, yeah, I meant malchus mardus. Malchus that one gets for violating a derabanan, not the same as malchus on an Isser derais.